Hey guys, welcome to another episode of VTEC Academy. You're about to get school. All right, so I'm here with Brian Hasty of FastBrakes. We are deciding, and actually we have already decided, what type of brake kit we're going to put on Project Backmarker. I wanted to bring you guys in and kind of show you the process we went through determining what we wanted to do with our brake kit. So Brian, we talked about this a little bit. Car is going to run a 15-inch wheel, so it kind of limits us a little bit.
Right.
And I am going to track it on occasion, also street drive it.
Okay.
So what did you recommend for me?
Well, the first thing we wanted to do on these older EFs, I mean, they're 89, 90, they're 30 years old now. People don't realize it's a 30-year-old car now.
Yeah.
So the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that the brake system that was on the car is in decent shape originally. So, and because we're changing most of the components, the basic components we want to make sure that they're in good condition on the booster and the master cylinder.
Now, my booster obviously had evidence of brake leakage.
Was it on the front of it?
On the front of it, right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so, and I understand that it wasn't leaking, so I think it's good.
Okay.
So basically I tossed the master.
Toss the master, okay,
Yeah.
which is fine. And so what we're going to do then is we're going to upgrade the master cylinder with another Honda master cylinder from the same generation EF, but it's going to be the one from the EX 4-door that came with this 1.6.
Right.
So this is a bigger master cylinder. It's a 15/16 versus 7/8, so it's a little bit bigger than the one that came on the car, which you already tossed. And
Somewhere.
yeah, so
Pretty sure I threw it away.
yeah. So I use a lot of parts from Centric, mainly because it's a big company. They're been around for 15 years now, and it's good quality stuff. These are all new master cylinders that we can get from them. And so you can see it comes complete with the reservoir, with the leads for the brake fluid level sensor and everything else. And the nice thing about this master cylinder is the brake lines, you can see where they are on here. They're both on the same side, which means that they'll go right into the lines, or the lines will go right into this master cylinder without having to bend them or change the fittings on the end.
Now, if I'm changing the master cylinder, do I need to change the proportion valve?
No, because on these cars, the way the brake systems are designed on these cars, you've got what's called a cross-diagonal split system, which means right front, left rear tied together, left front, right rear tied together. So
that basically means if you were to have a brake hose failure somewhere, you still have some brakes, and it's not just the left side or just the right side or just the rear, which would really be a problem.
That's correct. You've got one front and one rear brake. If you have a failure in this, that's why it's called a dual circuit system. But it's a cross diagonal dual circuit.
Yeah.
And but there's no need to change the prop valve. There's not that much difference in terms of the pressure differential between a drum brake car such as the EF and a disc brake car.
Okay.
There really isn't. In fact, later on in the Civic line, in the EK Civics, for example, the EK hatchback used the same proportioning valve as the SI.
Okay.
So there's really no need to change it. I read all the time where people will want to change, so like on the EG Civics, for example, the change from the 40-30 prop valve to the 40-40 and things like that. And it's really not necessary. There's not that much difference in the pressure that's getting sent to the rear of the car with the stock system.
Got it.
So you don't need to change it. In this particular case, because it's the EF, and the EFs are smaller than the EGs and the EKs in terms of their weight and everything else, I prefer going with the calipers from the Civic EX.
Sure.
And I do that, I recommend that because on a regular Civic such as yours, the factory caliper has a 51 millimeter piston, to about 2 inches. On the EX, they have a 54 millimeter piston, and they have that because that car's slightly heavier then
gives you more leverage over your pad.
Right, and the pad shape is different, but that can be handled by any number of methods, changing pads. Whereas on the Integra, they're 57 millimeter pads, so that's a big difference. And if you put an Integra caliper on an earlier car, you tend to get too much brake. And the nice thing about the EX calipers, and they typically tell people get the later model EXs from an EG, because they're a lot more common. The pad shape was carried for a number of years, and they make race pads in that particular shape.
And many different compounds.
Yes,
right.
From all sorts of manufacturers. Yeah. So that's why I recommend it, people. So we've got Civic EX calipers. Along with my brake adapter kit.
Right, because if I had Civic EX knuckles, these would bolt right on, but it still wouldn't be that big.
That's correct. They'd still only be 10.3 inches.
Right.
We're going to an 11-inch rotor.
So tell me about the bracket.
So the bracket kit, it basically relocates the caliper out about an inch from the center line of the axle. So given we're going from 9.5 to 11-inch rotors, it puts the caliper out exactly where we need it to be at, so the pads are right at the edge of the rotor.
Very good.
So, front rotors, this kind of interesting is, back when I first started doing this, right, 1995, I can't believe it's been 25 years already. I had a Civic EF, just like that, just like Backmarker, a 90 SI, and nobody made anything that would fit under 15-inch wheels, so I had to figure out how to do that. And looking through the parts brake catalog, everything else, I finally found a rotor that would work. And it turns out this rotor is from 89 to 91 VW Carrata, but it's the right offset in order to use it with a factory-style caliper with my bracket, in order to put it in the proper position. And to complete the system, last but not least, are braided steel brake lines.
Right.
So
super important.
So we're going to replace the rubber lines that are on there that are 30 years old.
They are.
And with some braided steel lines. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about the braided line itself and the construction. A lot of braided lines that are made out there, they're made by various shops and manufacturers. I have lines made by a company back in Indiana called Fluid Transfer Products. I've been buying them from him for 10 years. And one of the things that I liked about his lines when I first found him was that he includes these little black things on the end. And people ask me, what are those things? And they're called retention boots. If you look at a factory line, a rubber line, I don't know if you have any rubber lines around here, probably not. But if you look at a rubber line, both ends are crimped onto the rubber hose, and you see there's a big metal sleeve that's part of the banjo fitting or the inverted flare fitting, and then they clamp it in a big clamping vise, and that prevents obviously from coming apart. Well, on a braided steel line, you don't have that ability to do that because of the way the braided line is constructed. This fitting, where it goes into the line, has to be held in place with a crimped on I can't think what they call it. But anyway, these things were designed, the black little sleeve here was designed to prevent the ends from separating from the line itself coming out. And they're specifically mandated by the federal government under Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard. The other nice thing about these lines from FTP is that they have, I specify that they come with all the correct mounting brackets. A lot of times you'll find other products that have no brackets whatsoever on the line. It's just a line.
Zip ties.
And they expect you to zip tie it to the thing, which is really not the way to do it.
I'll tell you an interesting story.
Yeah.
I had a set of brake lines that came in on a car at the salvage yard. And they didn't have brackets. But they fit. So I put them on my car. And the zip tie broke. And then the brake line rubbed against the tire
or the rim. And
one day I'm coming up to I just exited the freeway. Hoping to make the light, so I was waiting to do some late braking. And when my foot went to the floor, it was exciting.
Pucker factor.
Yeah, definitely. And so since then, I use 4 zip ties. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Since then,
yeah, it's. I've experienced the same thing too. You know, I had lines on my before I started manufacturing, building all of these kits way back in the day. I bought a set of lines. I think at the time, they were. I don't know. They were made by a well-known manufacturer. Let me say that. And I'm sitting in the driveway, and I'd been working on the car or something, and I wasn't working on. I'd been working on the brakes. I was just working on the car, but I did something, or I bled the brakes or something. And so I'm, pumping the brakes. I'm sitting there in the driveway, and I'm pumping the brakes, and I decide to hold it. And so I'm just sitting there, hold it, pump it up, and just hold it. And I think, okay, it feels good. All of a sudden, it's like, well, what the heck happened there?
Yeah.
The line broke. I'm just sitting there in the driveway, and the line broke, and it broke right there at the end.
Oh wow!
Because it did not have these little guys on there.
Yeah.
And because what happens is, if you don't have these little guys on there, the line
can kink.
That's correct. The line will tend to kink at the end where this fitting goes into the actual braided steel portion of the line.
Right.
And I looked at
it can basically be. Almost cut itself across the sharp.
Yeah, because these lines have a Teflon line. They have a Teflon hose in the middle of them, and they're not designed to bend at a very big, sharp angle. Yeah. And so that's what these prevent, is that bending. So anyway, so I learned my lesson. So I got rid of those lines. One final thing we want to talk about was the directional rotation of the rotor.
Yes.
Okay, so we're looking at this particular rotor. So it's got the slots in it. You see the slots. Well, this particular manufacturer that I get these rotors from, it's a company called BrakePerformance.com. They have a sheet that comes with the rotors. Every one they sell comes with this sheet, and it talks about how to torque down your wheels properly, and also the direction that they recommend that the rotors run. So in this particular case, the right rotor, which would be the passenger side, would go this way.
It's like it's shedding.
Yeah,
it's
going this way. Although it doesn't really look that way. And in this particular case, these rotors, again from this particular company, they're slots, which you wanted instead of a drilled or a slotted and drilled, go to the edge. Other ones don't go quite to the edge. They've got maybe a pattern, and it's all really up to the manufacturer as to how they want to do this. The slots we've discussed before, they really don't do much anymore in terms of pad outgassing removal. That doesn't happen anymore. All of these pads that have been made in the last 20 years are made with inorganic materials, which doesn't shed. It doesn't create gases at high temperatures, and so it's not really a concern anymore. The slots more or less just clean the pad. Rear disc conversion.
Yeah.
Since you want to keep the factory type calipers, you're going to switch to a 94 to 01 Integra style trailing arm.
Yes.
Which will give you the proper track width on the EFs, unlike the 92, 93 Integras, which would increase the track in the back. I think it's 5 or 6 millimeters per side, which tends to push out the wheels.
Well, not only that, it actually makes the car harder to rotate.
Well, right, because you've got a wider track, right. So the 9093 doesn't really work on these, even though people used to do it and they'd find out different. So 94 to 01 Integra, trailing arms, bolt right on, everything works. But I appreciate you having me on and talking about all this, because a lot of times I don't get a chance to talk about specific things. When we're on sometimes for Midnight Oil, I don't get a chance to talk about a particular
kit,
a particular model of car, because of the questions that come in. So
it's surprising still how many of these are getting modified.
I'd love to have another one. I really, when I got rid of mine, that little red one I had, that was the first Honda I had. That was the start of my Honda
affair?
Yeah.
I'll tell you.
If you want to call it that, I guess.
Yeah, back in probably 2001, we were selling 80 B-Series mount kits a month for this car.
Right.
And that went for 10 years. And we still, to this day, sell between 20 and 40 a month.
Really?
Yeah.
For the EFs?
For the EF.
Wow.
So,
well, they made them from 88 to 91.
Well, they made about 225,000 to 250,000 of them a year. For that 4 years.
4 years.
So that's almost a million cars. Yeah.
Well, so if there's places where they're still around.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, cool. Hey guys, thank you for joining us on another episode of VTEC Academy. and I hope you learned something today. Head on over to fastbrakes.com if you have any questions about brakes or anything like that. Brian's your guy. He knows all about it, and he's got kits for everything, not just Hondas. So check him out. Anyway, we'll talk to you later.